Hello, and welcome to the Argyle Financial Controller Leadership Forum, Evolving Role of Financial Controllers. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. For those seeking CPE credit today, you must answer at least 3 polling questions and remain on the session for its duration. Polls can be found under the Polls tab on the right-hand side of your console next to chat. Afterwards, if you are eligible to receive credit, you will receive an email with a link to your certificates. If you have any questions on credits, please email cpe@argyleforum.com. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Philip Peck, Vice President, Advisory Services and Finance Transformation Practice, Peloton Consulting Group. We're super excited to have Philip and our panelists for a panel discussion titled The Modern Day Controller, Defining the Evolving Role of FCs. Welcome, Philip. Over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Greetings, everyone. I'm extremely excited to be moderating this session as I fundamentally believe this topic is highly relevant for the financial controlling and FP&A community. And we have 2 outstanding finance leaders here today who are going to share their insights and wisdom through the panel discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit about my background. As Nick said, I'm currently Vice President of Advisory Services and Finance Transformation for Peloton Consulting Group. Our company helps organizations drive digital transformation across their enterprise, providing advisory, consulting, and managed services capabilities across enterprise performance management, enterprise resource management, supply chain management, human capital management, customer experience, analytics, and data management for the cloud. I've personally spent my entire 35-plus year career in FP&A, finance, and the controllership domain areas, working in various corporate roles as well as management consulting roles, helping organizations explore the art of the possible and adopt leading-edge practices across FP&A, finance, and controllership functions. I'd now like to have each of the session panelists introduce themselves. Samantha, I'd like you to go first, and then Mohit.
Thank you, Philip. So I'm Samantha. I'm currently the financial controller of Levy Restaurants at the Bell Center, which is where our local hockey team plays. So for any of you from Canada, you should know the Montreal Canadiens, and that's where I'm based out of. My career journey started after 7 years of public practice, mostly in audit and tax. And 2 kids later, I decided that it was time for me to jump into the industry and out of the public practice world. And I got my first financial controller job with a company that owned restaurants, spas, medical spas, health clubs, etc. And that is where I got my taste and love for the service industry. From there, I went on, I dabbled in pharmaceuticals a little bit and realized that service is really where my heart is. And I went on to work as a director of finance within Marriott International for a number of years. I then went to work for a veterinarian company, also service industry based, but not the same as hospitality and less involved in financial operations. And now I landed myself with Levy Canada. Levy Restaurants is actually one of the biggest food and beverage suppliers to arenas worldwide. We are in a branch of the Compass Group. And it's an extremely interesting position I'm in, and I'm very grateful to be in the position. I'm very grateful to be here and sharing my experiences with you as well. And I'll pass it over to Mohit now.
Thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share my thoughts and my background with the team. And thanks for Peloton and Argyle for inviting me to the panel. A little bit about myself. I am currently CFO of a company called Welch Equipment. Welch Equipment company is actually part of Toyota Industries and Toyota Material Handling Systems of North America. We are essentially what we call integrators of warehousing solutions and manage everything from conveyor systems to warehousing software management to racking systems as stair lift and control lift systems for product movement. Prior to that, my background, I actually grew up in India, in New Delhi, and did my schooling and did my CPA, Chartered Accounting, as it's called, back in India. Worked with Deloitte in public accounting for a few years, and then decided wasn't going to continue in public accounting, moved to corporate world, and I joined General Electric in the financial services. So I initially started off on the capital investment side of things, worked on equipment financing, worked in real estate, and then joined GE's Global Leadership Development Program called Corporate Audit Staff, which is one of, I would say, probably the best experiences you could ever gain in your entire professional life, where for 3 years, I was working with different groups, different teams, different businesses every 3 to 4 months in different parts of the world. And I was fortunate enough to live and work in about 25 different countries during that time period, working with teams from all of the different backgrounds, from PhD in mathematics and statistics to engineering to marketing to data management and whatnot. After completing that, I came and worked for a few years as commercial finance leader for GE Healthcare's diagnostic imaging business in North America. And then leave GE, work in industrial and commodity businesses in different finance positions, including working as finance leader for strategy and business development in one of the roles, and then moved back into healthcare, worked for about 6 years as head of FP&A for Catholic, which is one of the largest not-for-profit health systems in the US. And then after that, worked for about 7 years as head of corporate FP&A, supply chain, and international businesses for Omnicell. Omnicell's again in healthcare, and they are robotics and automation providers for pharmacies and hospitals. And then just recently, I would say, but starting in January, is my current role as CFO of Welch Equipment. I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, and you might see some movement at the background because I'm currently actually off on vacation in Cabos, and so I'm actually at the Hotel Business Center, and therefore you might see some movement. So just bear with me on that.
Oh, Mohit, thank you. I love the diversity of experiences, Mohit, that you have, and obviously Samantha as well. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. It's time to dive in. So let's start with question number 1. And Samantha, I'll have you answer the question. From your experience, how has the financial controller role evolved over the last few years? If you have some specific examples, real world examples, that would be even great to bring it to life for all the audience participants.
Absolutely. So I do have to say that I really believe the role of the financial controller has undergone significant evolution over the past number of years. I'd say even throughout the duration of my career, I've seen the evolution take place. I think this change and the evolution has really been driven by technological advancements, regulatory changes, and the shifting business landscape that we're currently living in. I believe traditionally we were viewed as number crunchers whose sole reason for being in the company was financial reporting and compliance. The guy in the back who was head down in the numbers, didn't leave their office. Whereas now I think the modern financial controller has actually transformed into a strategic business partner who's actually very instrumental in organizational growth. I think one of the biggest changes that we've seen in our time is really the advancement of data automation and data analytics. We now have the ability to have real-time information, which is actually allowing for controllers to make better informed decisions. It also, and I'm sure Mohit can attest to this as well, it frees up a lot of our time that we used to spend doing very manual analytics and tasks, and has given us an opportunity to really start focusing our time on strategic business ideas, growth, risk mitigation, and as well as even IT changes and forecasting. I also think that, we've evolved from this like operational role really into a more dynamic role involving cross-functional departments. So we now work very closely with our IT teams, our operational teams, even our marketing teams to help align all of our business ideas and make sure that all of the vision is aligned within the financial understanding of the company. Another thing that I think is kind of interesting in the evolving of the controller is the ability to communicate effectively. The controller now, in my opinion, plays a role in being the person who has to explain numbers in a way that people who have no financial background need to understand. So we spend a lot of time now working with our operations teams to make sure that they understand their impact on the business finances. And it no longer kind of all falls on the controller. So maybe in the past, the stereotypical accountant who maybe wasn't this expressive, outgoing character, that kind of view of the controller, in my opinion, has changed and is now, we're more dynamic, we're more involved, and we're more well-rounded in that aspect involved in business. And I think, in the past 13, 14 years that I've been a controller, I've definitely seen that evolution. I've definitely seen the change from being head down in the numbers, providing analysis, to really now being able to contribute in the sense that I'm able to have that time to meet with my team leaders, to explain to them my world and how they impact my world.
Samantha, several thoughts as listening to you talk about the evolution and those real world examples. A couple thoughts come to mind. The pendulum shifting. So as you described it, old world, more back office oriented, kind of lived within your silo, did things extremely well because that was your tasks, but flip it. And it's probably accelerated like a marketing S-curve, where over time, be it access to data and information, automation, streamlining processes, elevating the role much more outward facing to the entire organization in a cross-functional way, elevating the financial aptitude of the entire organization so they understand the implications of decisions they're making, operational decisions, financial impact. I mean, that's a sea change across the board. I also love the element of the people, because you're describing a persona that's fundamentally different than it was not that long ago. And that there's so many implications of that: training, skills, what we look for, so on and so forth. So I love, great way to start the discussion.
I'm just going to jump. I just want to piggyback off something you said.
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
I think also now the controller, when they're coming into an organization, is expected to have a broader skill set than just finance and accounting. I think companies now are looking for people who have technology, some type of idea of marketing and stuff like that. So they're looking for a wider spread of skill set now, I think, in controllers.
Absolutely. Mohit, how would you answer this question?
No, I would certainly echo the sentiment and the thought process that Samantha laid out in terms of the evolving role of finance leaders in general, not just limited to the financial controller or the CFO, but overall the finance organization. And I would go out and say isn't anymore the one that would just work in silos and process transactions and move on and then provide the data reports on a period to period basis. It is a lot more than that. In fact, if I look at the evolving roles of CFOs, most CFOs now not only have the finance organization, accounting organization, but also have areas like treasury management, areas like taxes, areas like IT and HR. So for example, even in my role as a CFO, I also manage entire IT organization as well as the HR organization, just because these parts of the organization are so intricately linked from a functional process standpoint to the finance and accounting processes as the roles have evolved over time. And the amount of data management, systems management that finance and accounting teams need is just enormous compared to where ago. Any large organizations, finance departments, accounting departments using approximately 15 to 20 different applications, different systems that they need to coordinate and work to get the organization from A to B. Now, having said that, I think overall, from a business profile standpoint, and something that I think, Philip, both you and Samantha also echoed on it, the roles involved to leading and, in fact, working with the business teams. For example, revenue recognition over the years has evolved to become such a complex area, which at some companies, some businesses almost requires a separate revenue officer, for example, just to be able to figure out how revenue recognition will work in organizations that have different levels and different complexities of how deals are getting structured. And finance and accounting team literally need to get right in the front of the deals, working with the sales team, working with the marketing teams, working with the business development teams to actually structure the transactions versus trying to work it at the back end. And this is something that I've seen firsthand evolve over time, and we should probably keep that in mind. Along with that, how organizations change, reorganize, restructure themselves every few years in changing demand of the business models, evolution of markets, evolution of economies in which we operate. And finance and accounting is right at the forefront in able to help develop models and financial simulations to help drive that growth, that change for the businesses. So all of these are evolutions and changes that the finance community and the accounting community needs to be on top of as we continue to see these rapid changes flow through.
Mohit, thank you. The one immediate word comes to mind, but it's more of a mindset. As you're describing the evolution, the interdependencies across the organization, functional, people interdependencies, data interdependencies, as you said, the sheer number of systems that, broadly speaking, finance needs to interact with. There's tight and explicit interdependencies across the entirety of the ecosystem, and there needs to be a command and an understanding how everything works together. I think this sets the stage and a nice segue into the second question. And Mohit, I'll start with you first here. What responsibilities are financial controllers tasked with, and how are these essential to the entire finance function?
So I think there are two facets to this. The traditional role of being able to be the call it the firewall and the control mechanism for integrity of data and numbers in the organization, making sure external reportings and satisfaction of filings that need to go for all external reports, whether in SEC or whether it is tax authorities or whether it is state authorities that need to happen on a regular basis. I think those are integral and essential part of organizations that the finance controllers need to support and manage on a continuing basis. That hasn't changed. But on top of that, as the organizations get more complex, areas that need to be continued to look at, things like M&A. And I think every dynamic organization has a pretty active M&A pipeline and activities they work on. So being able to evaluate the deals, being able to look at either at due diligence level or due diligence and integration level of deals that are not yet on the radar but coming up, and be able to see whether this becomes a good fit. And when we talk about a fit, financial fit of any acquiring becomes a critical factor in terms of how businesses evaluate deals. That's one area that the role evolved in. I think we've already mentioned the whole IT system landscape and organization. That's the second area. Now, a lot of larger organizations, and at least I've seen in my evolution, my growth over the years, also have systems, even departments that operate offshore, that operate in other geographies. So the cross-functional, the cross-geographic evolution of the roles and being able to coordinate those activities for the entire business, which is so spread out, and sometimes at global scale, operating in different time zones, that becomes another critical responsibility and role that has evolved over time, that need to be looked at. Since most organizations have a certain level of system security and validations, those things need to be, again, something that finance and finance controllership needs to work off. And then coming to the public company environment, SOX compliance and control mechanism review on a regular basis has not only evolved, it continues to grow more complex. It continues to change based on how the organization changes, the roles and responsibility changes. I think over the last few years, if we see in general, the organizations have become top light, which means fewer and fewer control mechanisms exist on the top end. And therefore, how the control mechanism from a SOX compliance standpoint continues to stay relevant in organizations where there are not too many differentiation in roles and responsibilities at different levels, because the number of and levels of organizations come through a rapid evolution. Keeping all those things as a part of how work and continue to be cohesive are all part of finance and controllership function, which isn't a traditional firewall data crunching environment, but it is so much more dynamic, so much more different, and where threats and opportunities come from all sides. I mean, who would have thought that a few years ago you would be looking at areas like what would be the finance controllership role be if there's a ransomware attack on our organization? And if we are all aware of that in today's environment, literally 500 to 1,000 threats come through every organization on a daily basis. 99% of those are flagged up front, but then there are those 1% that don't get flagged up front, and that creates a considerable financial risk for the organization. So just as an added element of what to think about as the roles evolve of how finance and finance controllership needs to operate.
Wow. Mohit, that the powerful response. Your last comment around the role of financial controllership and broadly finance for something like cyber threats and ransomware, whatever it is. I live in downtown Chicago, and one of the better children's hospitals, Northwestern, is right downtown. They had to shut down their electronic operational systems for close to a month because someone hacked into the system. Someone in your role, someone in Samantha's role, guarantee immediately they were at the forefront of how do we mitigate, how do we forecast, how do we deal with it both operationally and financially, because that's just now what all of you have to do in those roles. So I think those examples are very, very powerful. The remit of financial controllership is fundamentally different. Samantha, your thoughts on that question?
So it's going to encompass a lot of what Mohit said, and actually the IT component always fascinates me. I'm always, questioning myself and how it's so interesting that as a financial controller, I'm really in the weeds with the IT team very often in terms of, reporting and all of that stuff. So it is very interesting in that sense that we get to see that aspect of the business and be involved in those risks and try to mitigate them. I mean, my off the top of my head, I wanted to say, what don't we do as financial controllers? Because I'm pretty sure we do just a little bit of everything: IT, HR, legal, you name it. I guarantee you financial controllers have touched on it at a certain point in their career. But again, so we're still very much responsible for financial reporting and for compliance, like Mohit was saying. I think we take on a very big role as well as in budgeting and forecasting, which in my experience, I've always kind of led it instead of done it on my own. I tend to leave that to the operators to work in unison with me to make sure that we're budgeting and forecasting based on their needs, not on what I think their needs should be. I will challenge them. Internal controls has become a big one, not just internal controls around financial reporting like SOX and IFRS. Internal controls really involving anything where there's a risk of a financial loss. So if it means writing policies about how your inventory is counted and stored, writing policies on how we, take receipts and work in our restaurants. So the financial controller now doesn't only control the old way of making sure our numbers were, adhering to our regulatory boards, but now we're really working within the organizations to make sure that we're really mitigating risks in every area of operations, especially in the hospitality world, where there's risks everywhere you turn. We are the front line of protecting all of our assets. And that's been something that I've seen really evolve over the years. We also, stakeholder communication. Very often we're the ones who have to speak to our shareholders, our business partners, our lenders, because now I find sometimes the financial controller role is kind of blended with the treasury role. So we kind of touch on almost everything in terms of business decision making. And it's no longer really these siloed tasks. It's really an all-encompassing task. And I really do believe that I've touched on every aspect of business. And sometimes I question why accounting is doing it, but it always comes back to the financial controller is that person who has that well-rounded view of everything in the organization that is happening.
So a couple immediate thoughts. As you're describing, specifically, you're talking about the internal controls and you're speaking to them in a very different way than a traditional mindset. You're speaking to the value chain of your business, the operational linkages all the way upstream to downstream and what can happen. But you and your world are actively inserted in every step along that journey. And now as I'm thinking about it, well, of course you are, because you have a command of the business and how it actually works. So why that comment of, well, gosh, should we be involved? Well, you're the ones who know how to knit together the puzzle of the organization. Hence, you're involved in the decision making. Hence, you have to be cross-functionally oriented to know how systems work together, data works together, people work together under the remit of financial controllership. Okay. I admit, I'm fascinated by the dialogue back and forth because it's different. The world is vastly different.
I would just add a couple of more thoughts to, as I was listening to Samantha talk about it, to this, which is, I think we as the finance owners in the organization need to actually, and we have a responsibility, I wouldn't say need, we have a responsibility to train each and every business owner, business unit owners, functional owners, to be controllers in their own rights. Because the way the organizations operate, it cannot be a finance responsibility to say the controls need to work. It is every departmental functional business owner's responsibility to own and make sure that they operate in an environment where the controls work and the controls work the right way. And it's everybody's responsibility. And we need to have that dialogue on an ongoing basis, that training, that discussion and support to say how they need to perform their roles more effectively if they are following through the control mechanisms that have been put in place, because it is not just finance responsibility. And I think this is something that should be an ongoing dialogue in every organization, because that is the only way you can manage and support the organizations effectively. That's one. Second, I think, and this probably should be looked at and thought through by everyone who's on the call as well. Finance team and finance controllers and those, they need to be, when we say we are business partners, we're not just business partners in supporting a function. We're business partners in running the business and running the organizations. Should know as much of the front end of the organization as they know at the back end of the organization. If we haven't explored enough, we need to go out and we need to be able to talk to the customers. We need to understand how our sales process works. We need to understand end to end how our products work, how the products are built, how they're marketed, how they're sold, how they're used, and how they are not used by our customers in order, and how the organizations need to operate. Because when we talk about risks, we talk about financial impact, we talked about controllership, it actually exists in every phase of that value chain that needs to be understood and known, and the risk associated with how that operations work by every finance owner in every part of the organization. And that's why it is very important to have that view of a business that just doesn't span one department, one function, but across all departments and all functions.
Can I just jump in on that? Sorry, it's clearly a
Sure.
topic we're passionate about. So what Mohit was saying, I think it also ties back to the effective communication that controllers need to have now. Something I do in my practice, because my operators aren't all financially savvy, it's not their world. We host lunch and learns. If you want to learn how to read a P&L, if you want to understand what is a balance sheet, these are all words that are thrown around that maybe your stakeholders do not understand what they mean and do not understand their impacts. So I think what Mohit's saying is so relevant and accurate in the sense that we are that link between all of those teams and divisions within our own companies because of all of the knowledge that we are exposed to. And by implementing yourself and giving the teammates that knowledge that we possess that they might not understand, actually really brings together the teams. And it kind of allows for operators. I mean, we come from different worlds, manufacturing versus service, but it's the same thing. If I explain to my operators why we do things the way we do things and what is the reason behind it, and it's not just coming from someone sitting in the back office, but somebody who's been on the floor, who understands the intricacies of their day-to-day, their reaction to us is a lot more open. Because we're no longer those people who are just commanding people to do things or saying what they are, and because we're really in the front lines now, we are gaining the respect of the operators because they're understanding our world and they see that we are trying to understand their world. And I find that in the past few years, that's become imperative in the finance function to be able to link operations and finance.
Extremely powerful. Both of you have clearly highlighted knowledge of the entirety of the business value chain is of paramount importance. The aspects that both of you highlighted, and I loved your reference to lunch and learns, and we're going to do Finance 101, 201, 301. You're elevating not only the financial acumen of the organization, but both of you are clearly highlighting the business acumen of the organization. And then why is it important? How do I contribute to the greater overarching objectives of the organization through the lenses that we need to have them thinking? Like, they don't live in silos. It's part of the integrated ecosystem in a holistic manner. I'll move on to a next question, and I'm going to jump forward a little bit because I think you both have highlighted something that I think will be especially relevant for the audience. And you both touched on it a bit. It has to do with risk. And Samantha, I'm going to have you go first. From your experiences, what are best practices for identifying, communicating, and mitigating risks before they become a problem or a crisis?
Yes, that is the gist of all that I do all day. So in order to mitigate, identify risk, we need to conduct regular risk assessments. And this needs to be done in a collaborative approach. So we need to understand what the risks are by looking at the company from A to Z. We need to understand where the weaknesses are within the company, and we need to be on top of those things. We need to consider, we use sorts of things called key risk indicators. So let's look at these things. Let's make sure we're not falling behind on doing specific tasks related to mitigating that risk. Get involved in those things. Don't be afraid to do those monthly kind of internal control audits to make sure that the risk is not there. Involve the stakeholders in understanding where their risk lies, and involve just, again, collaboration. Make sure that we're not falling behind on keeping up with our controls that we have in place. It's going to happen. Things are going to slip through the cracks. But if we're more on top of it and the company as a whole is involved and understands why they are risks and what the risks are and what the risks can lead to, then we will have a better ability to kind of identify those risks fast, make sure that we can mitigate them when they do happen, be it a phishing email, be it something like that. Once we do that, we are able to kind of put an end to it. I've seen it in my life as a controller for a financial group that I'm working with now. When I came in, we had an AR balance that was very, very, very high. Nobody was kind of on top of that KRI, that we were missing money almost in that sense. And now with my assistant controller, it's one of her task lists that she does monthly. She's making sure to follow up on those phone calls. She's making sure that the collections are happening within the 30 days. So it's really, again, to me, it all comes back to involving the right people and a clear understanding of the risks company-wide and financially, and how the risks operationally might lead to a financial risk down the line that maybe they don't see or understand.
Hey, Samantha, wonderful. A term you used, KRIs, key risk indicators. Back in my day, I used to work with the people who created the Balanced Scorecard, Kaplan and Norton. And I remember working with strategy maps, and you had a lot of things around KPIs, but they worked with some clients who had the concept of, well, we have a strategy map, we have KPIs, but what's as important or sometimes more important is the KRIs that are associated with the cascading of an organization's strategy through the organization. So that very relevant and top of mind. I think that's fantastic. And you really answered that well. Mohit, how about your perspective?
Yeah, I think obviously got a lot of the thoughts that I had in mind with the question that came up. But at the same time, I think the risk is everywhere. I mean, it's omnipresent, omnipotent, whatever word we want to use, but it is all around us at all times. And I think one of the important elements is that each and every employee has a responsibility to open for potential emerging risks. The risks are coming from any side, any direction. Two company employees are having a conversation at an airport, and they may pass some information about the organization that could be picked up by a third party and pose a risk in a lot of different forms. Company assets are being used every day, things like company vans, and somebody causes an accident in a company van, and then the third party decides to sue. That's a risk that could occur come any just an example. We talked a little bit about the technology risk, which is one of the largest areas of focus from a risk standpoint. So I think the role of finance and accounting is, from a risk management standpoint, is to continue to keep their eyes and ears focused in the old spreadsheets of here's all the risk mechanisms and here the control environment associated with that, and all those things probably are relevant to a small degree, not that too much. It is an evolution, it's an evolving document to change and be living and breathing every day, versus something that we look up once a month, once a quarter, once a year, whatever it is. And that's how the organizations need to evolve and be more dynamic about it. And obviously finance has to be at the forefront of leading the dynamism within the organization and actually letting it flow through every level, whether it's through trainings, whether it's through knowledge programs, it's through active dialogues or whatnot, and continue to do that. In addition, I think every organization should have some sort of DRP, BCP. What do these terms really mean? The risk will happen. Risk will continue to happen. Some will impact small and some will have a big impact. As long as you have a playbook in place, and every organization, no matter how small or how large it is, needs to have a disaster recovery program or a plan and a backup and business continuity plan in place that they can evolve and put in focus if any of these so-called internal external risks suddenly come into play, and use that not as something that is documented for auditors or for board or for third parties, but something that becomes a dynamic document through which you can continue to manage, know effectively how you need to react to things if those unforeseen situations or circumstances develop. And that's what the risk profile will be all about, because we will never be in a position that we can prevent all risk. That will never happen. No organization organization is going to be ever sufficient or self-sufficient to do that. The way to deal with that will be to have a right to ensure that the business continues to operate efficiently.
I love the framework around playbooks, and I spend a lot of time in the FP&A space when you're more forward-looking and you're thinking about what the future estimates of operational and financial performance. The one thing we know about something like a forecast is it's going to be wrong. It's rare that you just nail it. You hit the center of the bullseye on the dartboard. But what's important, to your point, is thinking through all the potential scenarios and plausibilities. So if things unfold in a manner that we didn't predict, what actions can we take? So back to your risk framework, it's the playbook. So you can take action immediately in real time, not be waiting, have a sense of latency. It's being able to take action immediately. I'm going to turn us a little bit to some Q&A because I think there's some good ones, and they touch on some things that we've already highlighted earlier.
I don't know, Philip, I hate to interject, but I cannot hear you.
My apologies.
Okay.
So I'll wrap these two together. Thank you, Samantha. As financial controllers take on more technology-focused initiatives, what emerging technologies do you see as particularly impactful for the finance function? So that's part one. Part two would be, given the increasing importance of technology in finance, what strategies and best practices can financial controllers leverage to stay updated on the latest technological advancements and then integrate them seamlessly into their roles? So it's a mouthful there, but I think that will, we've got 8-ish minutes here. I think maybe Mohit, I'll start with you, and then Samantha, you go next.
Sure. I was expecting something like that. So, and I think everyone's probably thinking, looking at AI every day, and what does AI mean for us? And if I were to simplify that in my simple framework of what AI really means from a finance accounting standpoint, it would be, we look at all the transactions around in the organization and say, what are the things that can be automated or can be done more efficiently by machines, either by simple things like creating automated files, simple things like codes, or maybe having the same work being done through somebody else, not necessarily us. And I think that's all part of what the technology-focused initiatives would be for us. How we adapt to that and how we essentially bring more efficiency into the organization is what's the key to being able to adapt these technologies, because using technology for the sake of using technology isn't relevant, isn't worth it. If it brings about more efficiency, it reduces the amount of time, amount of effort, and human effort that goes into some of those processes wherever they can be automated. That's what is the powerful thing about being able to use these technologies. I mean, you can call them AI, you can call it automation, you can call it alternative ways to do things, but that's away from how the technology-focused initiatives need to work, which again brings its own set of challenges, its own risks and opportunities. So we need to be watchful, and we need to be really, really aware that every technology will have its own issues that you need to work with, and there is no perfect solution out there yet that we can say will solve all the problems. So that's why the human element associated with everything that we do continues to be of foremost importance.
Never lose sight of the human element. And I like where you're going, Mohit. There's a tendency, I think, to not over dramatize, but add an element of mysticism around AI. And you're starting with, hey, let's keep it as simple as possible, as sophisticated as AI is, and as sophisticated as generative AI is, and machine learning and predictive analytics, and we could go on and on. At the end of the day, you're looking for very relevant, important, value-oriented use cases. And to your point, what can I streamline? What can I automate? What can I make more efficient? There's probably a lot more evolved ones that you can strike into with different use cases, but start at the foundational level and expand over time. Samantha, your thoughts?
I'm going to have to agree with everything Mohit said. I agree. I think people have this concept of AI coming in and taking over our jobs. But I think with AI, there's still going to be that risk of error. You need to have a human component to be able to explain things, to be able to be that liaison between the financial team and whoever else is asking those questions. And again, technology is great, but it's also the end user. Because when you put garbage into technology, it just spits garbage right back out. So you have to make sure that when you're implementing the technology, you're also giving it the data and the information that you need to be able to make those informed decisions and actually efficiently streamline. Because it always comes back to, you can have the best program in the world, but if it's garbage in, it's just going to spit garbage out. And that's what you kind of avoid. And so it's very important that even if we have these amazing technologies that are coming in to streamline or to automate some of our work, is that the people who are behind the screens are really well trained and understand the limitations of the programs and the benefits of the programs, so that they understand what the end result needs to be for us.
The day in the life of what's in it for me. It sounds simple, but that's how we help people appreciate what's really important. We've got just a few minutes here, and maybe we could just wrap it up here. And Samantha, I'll start with you. If there's some takeaways that you'd like to give to the audience, and Mohit, then we'll go to you. Like thematically, as they walk away, they go back to their desk or their virtual office or wherever they are. What would you want to leave them with?
So I think basically it's important to leave everyone with is that financial controllers are a new type of business professional. We are not the siloed back of the house number crunching, positions that people might think of us still. And that if you actually look within organizations that are evolving, the controller position has evolved so largely over the past number of years, as well as, we're continuing to evolve. And it's okay to want to ask more difficult questions. If you're in a position like financial controllership, you want to ask tough questions. You want to, if you want to get your hands involved in more things, do not be afraid to ask those questions. Do not be afraid to ask to be involved, because sometimes our leadership doesn't necessarily understand the importance of having a controller that's so involved in all areas of the business. So if you're a controller and you feel like you're missing, you don't have your pulse on certain things, go to your leaders and ask to be involved and ask those questions and be willing to, go out there and explore the organization. Because as I'm going to piggyback on what Mohit said, you need to understand every aspect of your business to be able to provide the insight that CFOs are looking for and that leaders are looking for. And we need to be those people to provide it. So I think my biggest takeaway for people on the call would be, if you think your pulse isn't on something, or you're questioning why things are done in a certain way, or maybe you have ideas on how to make things more efficient, speak up, and it will get you far. It will get you far in your career, because they'll see you for more than just that financial controller in the back office.
Wow, you are such the evangelist. Your energy and everything you're saying.
I've gone through the ringer. I've had to teach a few leaders the importance of the financial controller within an organization. So
we need a branding upsell to make it pop out. That's exciting. Mohit, what about takeaways you'd like to share?
Sure. Learn, soak information, understand new and emerging trends. Don't limit yourself into your comfort zone of knowing about finance. If you want to grow as business leaders, not just finance leaders. You need to know every aspect, every facet of the organization. Learn and understand the business. Learn and understand business models, not just finances. Are you able to go and sell your product to your customer? Think about it that way. And if you can do that effectively, then you've probably mastered the product, you've mastered the organization. And that's very important of how you evolve as business leaders. Be willing to take risks, get out of your comfort zone, and try to learn, understand, and think about different elements and different aspects of how business and business models operate that you need to moving to the next level.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for providing your insights, experiences, and wisdom. I learned so many gems and takeaways that I'm going to take back to my current role in consulting and use with my clients. Thanks to all the participants who joined the session, and hopefully you learned a lot as well. I expect all of you to have a great day. Nick, back to you.
Great. And thank you all for such an insightful panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else again for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin at 2:05 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be a keynote presentation titled Resiliency and Risk Management, Preparing for the Unknown. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.